Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another edition of Adam Interviews, where we are talking to some of the change makers in our community. And today I am interviewing someone that I've had the great opportunity to interview before when he first assumed the position of music director for the Rochester Philharmonic Orchestra, Andreas Delfs. And Andreas, thank you so much for joining us once again.
My pleasure. Welcome to my kitchen.
We're going to be, I'll hopefully be cooking up some good questions for you here. Among them is the first one, which is your thoughts on having your contract extended. You're going to be with us in Rochester for a few more years. What do you think?
Oh, I'm very happy about it. I really love Rochester, and you probably know because we talked before that I've known that city and its people for over 30 years, and to be part of that and to continue not only to be somebody who lives there and loves to live there, but also who works there and hopefully, as you said before, is able to make some changes. That's a great honor and a great joy.
Yeah, so in the mid 90s, you started to guest conduct, and you did so for 20 some odd years, coming in here and much beloved. And when you did get the job as music director, did you think of it as something of a homecoming because of that?
In a way, yes, because I felt so familiar with the place. In a way, not, because it was a very odd time. It was the beginning of 1921 that actually started. I'm saying 2021. And it was in the middle of COVID. And everything was different, as you remember. So we didn't perform in the hall that I knew well, Kodak Hall. First couple of months, all we did was Zooming concerts from auditorium theater, and everything was in question at that time. We in the performing arts really didn't know where all of this was going to be playing out, and to plan a new season in that situation, and then 2 years down the road already thinking of our 100th anniversary, it was a very odd and difficult situation. I just can tell you, I'm so happy that everything worked out well and that we are now back where we were before COVID.
Yeah, and doing perhaps better in certain circumstances. And we're going to talk about that in a moment. But I want to step back before we step forward and note that you have been all over the country and world, for that matter, working. I believe you were in Milwaukee for many years and then in Honolulu. I mean, really just all over. Has that been difficult? Have you had to move from place to place every
Oh
time you
yeah.
do that?
Oh yeah. It's a little bit like in the military, you are stationed for hmm, 8 years or so. That's kind of the medium range that a music director stays in the city, and you move a lot. And that's why we decided early off that we would have one home that would not change over the time. And actually, that's where I'm here right now. I'm here in Trumansburg, New York, where my family and I had a summer home or in between home for over 30 years, so that the children had a feeling they were not moving all the time and they could come back to some place. And our four kids grow up here, and we still sometimes come here for weekends and so forth. So it was a little bit easier due to that. But to answer your question, yes, it is difficult, because not only do you move from place to place, you immediately have to kind of play a certain role in the life of the arts in that particular place where you go to. And people expect a lot from you. And you mentioned two extremes. You mentioned Milwaukee, or even more extreme would be St. Paul, all the way up north. And then in the Pacific, Honolulu. You can imagine that the requirements and what those community needs to have a successful orchestra were extremely different. And you had to adjust very quickly. And it's exciting and a great challenge, but it sometimes can be difficult.
You know, I never put that together, but a lot of people in my field, especially when you become, a veteran reporter or a veteran anchor, you can move around a lot, and you have to suddenly meet the movers and shakers. You have to adopt the culture of the community. That, and if you, especially when you're in a cultural role like music director, that has to be very difficult at times.
Yeah, it is, because you work together with the other cultural leaders, with the other people that run performing arts institutions. You work along with people that are donors and supporters to the city, and they give and support many different causes. So you have to establish yourself, because you're new to them, re-establish the organization that you work for. And in the case of Rochester, that was another one of those challenges, because even before COVID, the orchestra had gone through some difficult years. And I don't want to go as far as saying there were lots of repair to do, but there were some burned bridges that needed to be fixed. And it came in very handy that I knew people there because I've been guest conducting here so long, and that I know upstate New York very well because, as I said, I have a home here in Trumansburg, New York, and I went to school in New York City. So I always feel extremely comfortable on the East Coast of the United States, although, as you know, I'm a native German from a very different part of the world. But all of that helps when you move from place to place.
Yeah, and having gone to some of the best conservatories, New World, Old World, and you couldn't have picked a better second home and now first home in Trumansburg. It's such a beautiful place. One of the things I want to talk about is your ability to blend old and new when it comes to the music that's offered to the community. We've talked in the past about some of the more modern composers that you've been featuring. But before we do that, we've got the Beethoven Festival coming up.
Oh, yeah.
That looks very exciting. Tell me about that.
Well, that's going to be one of our staples this season. And it really came out of trying to make lemonade out of lemons because, as you know, we don't own the hall that we play in. Kodak Hall is owned by the University of Rochester. And we're always very dependent on what kind of dates they give us to perform. And sometimes they work well, and sometimes they create challenges, as in this case. When we have to do two back-to-back weeks, that's always difficult because our audience is used to a rhythm where there's a philharmonic concert, a pops concert, then a week of educational concerts. And so that repeats every 3, 4 weeks. So when we suddenly have to do two philharmonics back to back, week after week, it's a challenge. And we met that challenge, or I should say, I should not be too optimistic. We are hoping to meet that challenge with the Beethoven Festival, which is really all the best music Beethoven wrote. His most famous symphonies, the Eroica, the Fifth, the Pastoral, the Seventh, his most famous piano concertos, violin concerto, the triple concerto, some of his most famous overtures, and all of that in the span of 2 weeks, but four programs. Normally we do one program in a week. This will be two programs per week. So if you're really into Beethoven, you get to hear really all his greatest masterpieces within the space of 10 days. So it's going to be massive and it's going to be intense. And I know already by the tickets we have sold so far that people really want to see what that's all about. And we're going to have a ball. It's going to be wonderful.
Yeah, massive and intense. It's very fitting for Beethoven. And speaking of the fifth, one of the videos that I watched in preparation for this interview was the PGA Championship spot that you and the RPO did, I believe, with the fifth. How cool is that?
Yeah, that was very cool. That was just a coincidence, and one of those coincidences where when everybody plays along and everybody is willing to step over a few rules, can happen. Normally, an orchestra is a slow-moving train. Our planning cycle is out so long. We normally plan 2 years ahead of events.
Wow, I
So
didn't know
this
that.
this happened within a week, and it was just because everybody said, "This is great, we're going to do this," that everybody played along, and you've seen it, right? It's a very
Oh,
fun
yeah.
commercial.
Absolutely, and it aired right on WROC TV. So we were very excited about that to have the Rochester connection, as always. So you've been around the world, really, and not just as a conductor, but as an enthusiast, as a listener as well. Where does the RPO stand, do you think, in the spectrum of orchestras internationally?
Well, it's an interesting phenomenon. I have been in this business now for over 40 years and conducted a lot of orchestra in a lot of different countries. And one thing that we see is everywhere, literally everywhere in the world, the technical level of orchestras has risen tremendously. When I started out as a 20-year-old, I tell you, there was still some orchestras that needed serious help to play
Mm.
together. Now, wherever you go, even if it's in smaller cities, the orchestras are very proficient, well prepared, and can basically do anything. So, on that level, also the Rochester Philharmonic has risen to an absolutely um, top international level, I would say. Um, they can play anything. Their stylistic versatility is incredible, meaning they can play a concerto by Bach and a brand new piece that has never been performed in the same program, which is also something that didn't happen that way 20, 30, 40 years ago. And I can trust them completely. We talked about the Beethoven Festival. You can imagine when you do something like that, you have a little less rehearsal time and preparation time than normally because you prepare twice as many programs in the normal time frame. You can only do that with an orchestra that knows their stuff and not only knows how the music goes, but can be completely be relied upon to deliver at 100% night after night. And on that super professional level that really just the finest in the world can do, I see the Rochester Philharmonic. And I don't only say that because I'm their proud music director, but I say that in direct comparison. I conduct in China, I conduct in Germany, I conduct in South America, I conduct in Australia. So I hear a lot of groups, and I'm always extremely happy, proud, and sometimes relieved to return to my home orchestra in Rochester because they're just so good.
Yeah, and for years, decades, maybe even since the birth of the modern orchestra, we've heard the death knell, so to speak, from critics who say, it's going to be harder to support a local orchestra, especially in a medium-sized city like Rochester. And yet we're still here. And in the announcement of your contract extension, they said that we're $40 million into a $50 million
Yeah.
campaign. So where do we stand financially, and what does the future of RPO look like?
Yeah, isn't that fantastic that we started? Actually, that was one of the first things that I was told when I was asked to join the Rochester Philharmonic as the music director, that there is a structural deficit challenge. Every year, the orchestra was a little bit on the low side with the budget. So they wanted to start a huge endowment campaign or a huge capital campaign to fill that hole. And they thought it would be a good idea to do that around the time of the 100th anniversary. So it started quietly, I think 3 years ago, and we have another 2 years to go, and we're very close to the goal. And that just shows you that this community wants an orchestra of this class and this stature. This is a city, Rochester City, that has an abundance of great cultural institution. You mentioned a mid-sized city, but look what we have in terms of theater, in terms of museums, in terms of performing arts groups, Garth Fagan, the MAG, Rochester Philharmonic, the different choruses, the old music groups, the new music groups, what music is going on in churches, what alternative groups as far as theater goes, you have. It's enormously abundant in terms of what it offers. It's real big city cultural life in a mid-sized city. And people want it. And we see that by the way we are supported, by the way we are not only financially supported, but also the attendance and the moral support and the enthusiasm. We just opened our season last week with a great concert at Kodak Hall, and the enthusiasm was palpable. It is wonderful to live and work in a city that appreciates the arts and needs and wants the arts.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And we obviously talked about the Beethoven Festival, but what also lies ahead for the rest of the season for RPO?
Well, you mentioned that we do a lot of modern music, but we also do a lot of standards, and that's kind of our recipe. We try to give people the music they want to hear, and that is a small chapter. It's the Beethoven symphonies and Brahms, Tchaikovsky, Carmina Burana, and Four Seasons, and it's a canon that needs to be repeated regularly because it's so beloved. But you cannot do it every time. You cannot do the same program every time. So we mix it up with a lot of unusual, less often heard music, and a lot of contemporary music. You know that we do this program that we call Voices of Today, which is a commission program where we work together with living composers and ask them to write very specific pieces that are very specifically for the Rochester Philharmonic and its players. Give you one example. Very recently, we did the world premiere of a concerto for oboe, bassoon, violin, and cello that was written for our principal oboe, principal cello, principal violin, and principal bassoon by one of the world's leading composers, Roberto Sierra, who's performed all over the world, and really custom tailored to us. And it was a big success. And people loved it not only because it's a great piece, but it features the best players and some of the best players of their orchestra. And that's what I mean by pieces that are custom tailored to our needs, custom tailored to our orchestra and the community. And to mix that up with Beethoven 5 and Carmina Burana and Tchaikovsky 1812 Overture is a recipe that, knock on wood, has served us quite well during the last 3 years.
No, look, it's how I read my books. I go from classics to a newer novel to a biography to a science fiction. I like to
Me
hit
too.
them all.
Me too. You need to mix it up. Otherwise, if you only just go back to the standards and what you know, it can be exciting, but it gets boring after a while. So you need to create a mind in yourself when you're a reader or in your audience when you're a conductor that is an open mind, that people who come to the RPO know even if there's something that they don't recognize on the program, even if there is a name of a composer that they've never heard of before, they can rely on that it's exciting and that it's something they will appreciate and enjoy because we simply don't let them down.
Yeah. And another fascinating program that people won't see necessarily on stage for one of the headliners, but RPO has been involved with the orchestral program for urban students, or Opus. And why don't you talk about that? Because that seems, we talk about the classics, we talk about the modern, but we also want to talk about the up and coming, and there may be some of that here in Rochester.
I fully agree. A huge part of what we do is work with young musicians, the players of tomorrow, and young listeners, the audience of tomorrow. We are very closely connected to the Rochester Philharmonic Youth Orchestra. We do a ton of programs for young people of all ages. We start with the very young toddlers that come to listen to Peter and the Wolf, and we do programs that have a more didactic angle where school classes are bussed into Kodak Hall. We always have our young listeners in mind, and not only the young ones in age, but also the ones that simply had not had an opportunity to hear the orchestra or classical music in general before. That's why we play so many free concerts in the summertime outdoors. That's why we do sensory sensitive concerts for people that maybe have family members that need a little extra help when they come to concert. And we really have a very broad program that tries to cover everybody in the community, not only the ones that have had a subscription to the RPO for 20, 34 years, but especially the ones that needs to have an opportunity to fall in love with the music that we love, and therefore being given the opportunity to come in the summertime or in a free concert or in a school concert or a concert that's specially designed to special needs.
Yeah, I heard someone about a month ago say that brains are handed out randomly, and I think that musical ability and inclination is somewhat the same thing. I mean, you're closer to it than I. So obviously, it's not just for enjoyment, but also to find the next great composer, the next great trumpet player. You need to expose them, and suddenly they can be discovered.
Absolutely. What we hear a lot is, "Oh, classical music is not for me. That's not." And then we find out they've never had the chance to hear anything. And once they come to a performance and see how the audience stands up at the end of a incredible piece, not everybody, but many of them get hooked for life. And we all have maybe a moment where a theatrical performance or a symphonic performance or a book or a picture caught fire in our minds when we were young. I could tell you exactly when it was and where it was that I fell in love with music. And many people have those kind of experiences where they say it was such place at that time that I fell in love with reading or fell in love with ballet, whatever it is. And to create these opportunities for everybody in the community, as I said, not just for our subscribers, that is the number one mission of the Rochester Philharmonic.
So where were you?
When that happened to me,
Yeah.
I was in my hometown theater in Germany during the Christmas holidays. We don't do so much Nutcracker as you do in this country. We do the opera Hansel and Gretel. And it was the first performance of Hansel and Gretel. And it didn't take much longer until the lights going out, which by itself for a 6-year-old kid is something very special. But the first few chords of the overture, and I was I was gone for the rest of that evening and for the rest of my life. And it was one of those situations. It was a school visit. My school class went to the opera house and saw the performance as part of the curriculum. And I can tell you, there were more kids than me that fell in love with music that day. Not everybody, but it was that opportunity that was given to us that changed our lives.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I will say for me, I obviously always wanted to love classical music. I never disparaged it, but I didn't get it. And I ended up listening to, I pulled it, I was just, back in the day of CDs, I listened to Greenberg's Great Courses series. And it first started just with Beethoven, I think, and then moved on to Mozart, and then actually kind of the history, like the basics of music. And suddenly, knowing what makes up a symphony, the
Mhm,
exposition,
mhm,
and
mhm,
all of that. Suddenly, I always liked classical, but now I feel like I'm a true. I can understand a different appreciation of it, and it's kind of like how we listen to pop music. We innately know what to expect, the
mhm,
chorus and the
mhm,
bridge and all that stuff, and to know how a symphony's put together. And I don't know, just so I encourage people out there, whether it's Robert Greenberg or I don't know if you have any other suggestions, like just get to know the elements, and I think it will bring a greater depth of appreciation for it.
mhm, mhm. It is, and it's easier than ever because of the internet. If you are, for example, inclined to go to one of our Beethoven concerts, just to give you an example, take the time to look on YouTube. There's tons of performances, but there's also tons of performances with commentary.
Yeah.
Uh, by myself, for example, but by others too, that give you an introduction and tell you a little bit more about the history, which very often is interesting. I mean, come on, Napoleon was
You read
occupying
my
the city
mind.
where Beethoven wrote the Fifth Symphony.
You read
So
my
some
mind. Yep.
historic background is wonderful to know. But also, as you just said, the structural and the acoustics and all of this, you can find out anything on YouTube or whatever is your preferred channel these days, and do it. You will enjoy the performance without it, but you will enjoy it even more with it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And one thing that I noted too is, you're continuing to do work on the side, and some of that's going to be performed. I always mess up the pronunciation, but Prokofiev's Romeo and Juliet suite.
Mhm.
Tell me about the work that you're doing there.
The pronunciation was absolutely perfect, Adam.
All
There's nothing wrong
right.
with you.
There we
Um,
go.
we do a dance festival this season because we use regularly to work with some of the great dance groups in town. Garth Fagan, great friend of mine, and we did last year the Sacre du Printemps with him. The Rochester City Ballet we do every year with them, Nutcracker, but also on other occasions. For example, they participated in our great Eclipse concert last year.
Oh, it's
So we
incredible.
wanted to celebrate our communication and collaboration with the ballets in a special way. So again, there's two back-to-back weeks. One week will feature Garth Fagan with the Philip Glass piece, and the next week will feature the Rochester City Ballet with a short with a Reader's Digest version of Romeo and Juliet, which I wrote myself from the whole ballet. The whole ballet is over 2 hours long, and I made a version of the highlights really that makes you follow the story, which we kind of all know, of the star-crossed lovers, with some of the best music of the ballet by Sergei Prokofiev. And yeah, it's a brand new suite together with the Rochester City Ballet, and I really look forward to that.
Not that we can ever truly predict the future, but do you see yourself staying in Rochester throughout the tenure of your career here?
Listen, I just bought a house downtown, so I think
Okay, there
I
you
think I'm
go.
going to stay for a while. No, it's as I said before, it's really Rochester has an incredible quality of life, and we bought the house downtown because we just love to go to the restaurants and walk in the parks and go to the movie theaters and the museums and really enjoy city life. And there's not too many places where I would say, yeah, I really want to live downtown because downtown has so much to offer. So as far as that goes, I'm very much in love with Rochester and the Rochester Philharmonic and its audience. So I have no place to go anywhere else right now.
I'll tell you, it seems like despite all the moving and the hard work, you're in a good spot right now. You've got a place in downtown Rochester, one of the most beautiful cities around, I think. You've got a place in Trumansburg, which, tell me a place that doesn't match the scenery behind you right now.
Oh
And
yeah.
you're working with the RPO, an organization that you've had a relationship with now for, more than 30 years. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's, you must be, I hope there's some reflection going on and appreciation for
Oh,
where
very
you've
much.
moved
Especially
yourself.
this time of the year, I'm looking out of the
Yeah.
window, and there's no place more beautiful than upstate New York this time of the year, is when the leaves change color. And as you know, so much music is inspired by the changes in nature. For example, Beethoven's Pastoral Symphony. So to sit in this setting and have my score next to me preparing for the performance of the Pastoral Symphony 3 weeks from now, I think, during our Beethoven Festival, it all is in harmony. I know that sounds a little kitschy, but you know what I mean, right? When
Yeah.
everything in your life, enjoy my first grandchild that he has his second
Congratulations.
birthday soon, and everything is in harmony right now, and I couldn't be happier.
Yeah, very good. And I look forward to joining you. One thing that I've grown to love is because I'm trying, desperately to get my son into classical music. And one avenue that I found that you have graciously presented to us is the soundtracks to shows, to movies, the John Williams stuff that's been done. And I know that there's some amazing stuff coming up later this month in October with a lot of Eastman folks with movie scores, video game scores. And I'm just so grateful for that because it does open the door to a lot of people who may not have appreciated classical music up to this point.
Absolutely. One of our most successful things was doing the Harry Potter movies with live music. And having worked with John Williams and knowing that the music that he writes for his movies is basically symphonic music,
Yeah,
he I don't want to say steals, but he borrows from Rachmaninoff and from Stravinsky and from Puccini and all the great romantic composers. And many of the colors and textures you hear in his great film scores, not only Harry Potter, but especially Star Wars and the Indiana Jones movies and many, many others more. So I have many people who love John Williams and the music rights for the movies, and then go accidentally to an opera, let's say Puccini La Bohème or Richard Strauss The Rosenkavalier, and I say, hey, that reminded me so much of Jaws or
hmm,
another John Williams movie. Well, it is because it's the same tradition, it's the same craftsmanship, it's the same artistry. And as you said, it's a wonderful introduction for younger people and people who don't go often because it breaks the barrier. People will find out very
that's it.
quickly, well, a John Williams score is not so different from a Prokofiev score.
Yeah. Well, I really do always enjoy our conversations,
So do I.
Andreas. So thank you so much for joining me and reminding me that I need to get down to Trumansburg and Ithaca and grab some taste of Thai and a view of the beautiful Cayuga Lake. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for being part of the fabric of the Rochester community and bringing us the harmony that we need.
Thanks so much, Adam. Nice talk.
Of course. So you were just listening to Andreas Delfs, the RPO music director, getting a much-deserved contract extension. So we look forward to seeing what he's going to bring to the stage over at Kodak Hall and various venues throughout Rochester over the years. But again, can't stress this enough. Later this month, the Beethoven Festival tickets are going fast, so you're going to want to get your hands on that and be inspired by the thumping music of Beethoven. So once again, thank you to Andreas Delfs for everything, the RPO for bringing us so much joy over the years, and thank you for watching. Please feel free to remind your family and friends about the Rochester First streaming app because you're not going to get interviews like this elsewhere, and so it is an important outlet, an important platform in our community. So thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful evening. And with that, take care of yourselves.
Get the Rochester First streaming app today for everything you love from News 8 On Demand, plus exclusive shows you won't see anywhere else. Search ROC and download for free on Roku, Amazon Fire, and Apple TV.